How to display a progress bar while executing a long process with C++ in Unreal, because it's possible that you have long tasks to execute, and when a task takes a lot of time, it just freezes the engine and it becomes unresponding, and the user may think that the editor just crashed. Yeah, that's not what we want. So we're gonna display a progress bar showing the progress of the task, and as a bonus, you'll be able to add a button to be able to cancel the task if the user wants to, and if that was not enough, you'll also be able to ask some questions to the users in the middle of the process, and that's pretty awesome. So let's get to it. And here we are in our usual header file, and today we're gonna have two little functions. Both functions are only going to work in the editor because displaying a progress bar during a slow process is only an editor thing. If you want to do it in game, well, you have to do it in game, because this way it's just going to work in the editor. Here we go. So we have two functions. The first one is to execute a slow task with a progress bar. So execute slow task with progress bar, and that's about it. It's just going to execute a slow task. In our case, the slow task is just going to be looping 10,000 times or 100,000 times, I don't remember, and printing every iteration. So yeah, that's going to be a pretty slow process, and that's why we're going to display a progress bar with it. So that was the first function, and the second one is just an example to show you that it's possible to nest a progress bar into another one. That way you'll be able to display a task and a subtask and display both progress at the same time. So execute a nested slow task with progress bar. That's just gonna spawn a second progress bar below the first one, and that's about it. So these are the two functions we're gonna do, and it's time to jump in the CPP, and we're gonna start with the includes as usual. And today we're gonna need the FScopedSlowTask, which is gonna be the object we're gonna use to tell Unreal that we are starting a slow task and finishing a slow task. So that's going to be the object determining where is the start and the end of the slow task. And then the feedback context is going to be used to display a cancel button and ask questions to the user during the process. So this is going to be the header we're going to need to do that. Both those headers are inside the core module. So let's just make sure that it's already inside your build.cs file. And since it's the core module, you should already have it. If you don't, well, you probably have already a bunch of issues. So let's just add the core module right here. And now we can go back in the CPP and take a look at the first function. So to execute a slow task with a progress bar, what do we have to do? Well, since in my case, my slow task is really just executing a long for loop, I'm just going to take note of the number of iterations I'm going to do in that for loop. And in my case, it's going to be 100,000 iterations. So we're going to do a really long for loop. And that's going to be our slow task. Then now that we have the number of iterations we are going to do in the for loop, we can create a scoped slow task. And that's what we're going to do right here. FScopedSlowTask. Slow task is equal to a new FScopedSlowTask. Obviously, we're creating a new structure of that type. And to be able to create that structure, we're going to need the amount of iterations we want to do in our slow task. In our case, it's going to be simple. It's just going to be the amount of iterations we're going to do in our for loop. But that number can be pretty much anything. If you know the percent of work that your slow task is going to be, you can make it out of 100% and just write 100 here. Or you can make it a float and make it out of 1. It doesn't really matter. You can write anything you want in there. You can write 772, doesn't really matter, even if your iteration count is at 100,000. It really doesn't matter that number in there. It's not related to that one here. It's just that the scope slow tasks need to know what is going to be the end goal of that task. It can be 5, 50, 100,000, doesn't matter. It just needs a end goal. And it's going to use that end goal to calculate the percentage of the progress bar every time we update the progress bar in the user interface. Because the progress is calculated automatically, so we need to know what is the end goal of that progress bar, and then we just say, hey, we did a new iteration, or hey, we just did 5% of the work, or something like that, and then the slow task is going to update the progress bar accordingly. You don't have to do any math yourself. It's going to be done automatically for you by the slow task, but to be able to do that, it needs to know what is the end goal of that task. So that's why I'm providing the iteration count right here. And then after the iteration count, we need to tell it what is going to be the text written on the progress bar, because on top of the progress bar, you can display a text, a title, or some information about the current task, and that's what I'm doing right here. To be able to provide a text to that progress bar, though, you have to provide it inside a lock text. And in my case, since I'm too lazy to create a lock text category, I'm just going to set it inside the NS lock text. That lets me create my text right here without creating a lock text category. So NS lock text, then you have to provide the namespace of your lock text. In my case, it's going to be 57 slow task, doesn't really matter. And then the name of your message message. So it's just going to be slow task in my case. It's just the key of my message. And finally, I can provide the message itself. So that's going to be my processing right here. So I have my namespace, my key, and my message, and that's what's going to be written on the user interface. Just the message, not the namespace or the key. Just the message is going to be written on the user interface. And then the last two variables are optional. You don't have to provide them. And actually, I'm just providing the default values just because I wanted you to know that you can provide some extra information. The true right here is just to say that I want to enable my FScopedSlowTask. It's possible that you don't want to enable it. Maybe you want to wait a certain amount of time before enabling it. Maybe your code doesn't want to enable it in this current context. Then in that case, I can just set this boolean to false and the progress bar is not going to appear on screen. So that's pretty much the purpose of this boolean right here. In my case, I want to display it. So I'm just going to say that it is enabled. So true right here. And the last one is the context of the progress bar. In my case, I'm using the default context. So gwarn, which is the default context in the engine. And that's about it. The reason why I wanted to show it to you, it's because we're going to reuse gwarn later. And I wanted to show you where the gwarn is associated to this slow task, because the slow task by default come associated with the gwarn, and I wanted to show you that yes, it actually comes with it. And then I'm gonna reuse gwarn later, and that's going to affect my slow task or vice versa. Good. Okay, we created a slow task. Now that we have a slow task, we can just show it on screen. That will be nice to show the progress bar. So slow task, make dialog that's going to display the progress bar and say that I want to display a cancel button because I want my user to be able to cancel my task in the middle. And to be able to do that, well, we need a cancel button, and that's what that little boolean right here is doing. It's just going to display a cancel button on the widget. Slow task, make dialog, display a cancel button. Now that's done, we can process our slow task. And in our case, as I said, it's just going to be a really long for loop. So that's what I'm going to do right here, really long for loop, 100,000 times. And during each iteration of the for loop, I'm going to update my progress bar. So slow task enter progress frame, that's just going to tell my slow task, hey, I did some progress in my slow task. And then you have to say how much progress did you actually make. In my case, I made one progress out of 100,000 because that's my end goal that I have right here. If you want to increment by 5, you can increment by 100,000, doesn't matter. You can do it whenever you want. You can wait until the end of the for loop, just update it right here at the end and say that you processed 100,000 frames and it's going to work. But in my case, I want to update my progress bar every iteration of the loop, and that's why right here I'm doing it every iteration of the loop, and I'm saying, okay, I did one extra iteration, and then the progress bar is going to go forward by one iteration. So that's just the little one that we have right here. And then you can update the text written next to the progress bar. So I'm going to update it right here. The same text, so it's going to be the same namespace and the same key. So slow task and slow task right here. And then my text is going to be updated to be processing. And then I'm going to have the X value right here and the total amount of loop I want to do in this progress. So the user is going to know which iteration I am in the current loop and what is my end goal of my current loop. And that's just going to give more information to the user about the current process. And that's it, actually. That was everything we needed to do to just create a progress bar and update it. Right now, I'm not doing anything in my for loop, though. I'm just updating a progress bar that doesn't really matter. So I'm just going to print something. So I'm doing some logic in my for loop. So here, every iteration of my loop, I'm just going to print LOL, and that's about it. And then after printing that, I'm going to check, okay, did the user cancel my task? Because it's actually possible to cancel it. There's a cancel button. So here, I'm just going to check, okay, did the user cancel it? If the user canceled the task, obviously, we want to stop the task, and that's what I'm going to do. So if gwarn received the user cancel, that means that the user clicked on the cancel button on your slow task. And if that happens, I'm just going to return false, say that it was not a success. The user canceled the task in the middle. Doesn't matter where the current task is at the moment. I'm just going to return right away. I'm not modifying or creating any variables that matters during my process, so it doesn't really matter in my case. I'm just going to return right away. But obviously, if you want to do some cleanup before quitting the slow task, you can do it right here before returning, and that would work. You can do all your cleanup and then give back the control to the user whenever everything is ready. Good. One last little note about that. The gwarn receive user cancel is the same as if you called slowtask.shouldCancel. It's the same exact function. This one calls that one, and that's about it. You can use the one that you prefer. In my case, I wanted to use gwarn just to show you that, hey, gwarn is used somewhere, but you can use this function call if you prefer, because I think it makes a little bit more sense to use this one in this context, but later on, you'll see that this slow task dot should cancel is a little bit confusing, but you'll see that later. For now, I'm just going to use gwarn received user cancel, but you can also use that one, and it's going to do the same exact thing. So that was if the user wanted to cancel the task, but there's also something else you can do. You can ask a a question to the user, and that's what I'm going to do right here. But I'm not going to do it every iteration of my loop, because obviously I have to iterate 100,000 times, and if I have to ask 100,000 questions to my user, that loop is going to last forever, and we don't want to do that. So I'm just going to do it at the middle of my loop. So if x modulo half of my length, it's just going to tell me, okay, I'm exactly at the half of my loop, so I can simply ask a question to my user, and that's what I'm going to do right here. I'm just going to scroll down a little bit, and this is my question. So to ask a question to your user, you can just do a g-warn yes/no f. That's going to be, hey, I want to ask a question to my user, and the question is going to also be a lock text, so you have to provide it as a lock text right here. So ns lock text. For the namespace, I'm going to keep the same one. It doesn't really matter. You can use the same namespace for multiple messages, but then you have to change the key, because at the beginning we were updating the same message. So the slow task and slow task message right here, it's the same one. So we're re-updating the same message, but here we're creating a new message. So the slow task question, that's going to be a different message, and that's going to be the question I want to show to my user. So do you want to continue? If my user wants to continue, I'm just going to continue the process all the way until the end. But if my user doesn't want to continue right here, I'm just going to also return right away, because my user decided that he didn't want to wait until the end of the for loop before continuing the task. But obviously you can use that input to do anything else. In my case, I'm just using it to cancel the task again. But if you want to ask the user questions about the current process and ask him how to proceed or things like that, you can do it using this little function right here. I guess that's everything I had to say about the slow task. In short, it's simple. You create a slow task that's just going to say, hey, get ready, I'm about to execute a slow task. Then using that slow task, I'm going to display a progress bar on screen and decide if I want to let the user cancel it or not using this boolean right here. So I'm going to display it on screen. Then every X amount of progress I'm doing, I'm just going to tell Unreal, hey, can you update my progress bar a little bit? This is the amount of progress that I did, and I want to display this message also. Can you do that? Yes, thank you. Here we go. I updated my progress bar, and that's about it actually. You can do that for all your slow processes, and it's pretty nice to have a progress bar showing where I am in the current process. And finally, if the user wants to cancel, or if you want to ask questions to the user, you can do it that way. But obviously you don't have to do that if your process doesn't need it. Here we go. At the end right here, the scope slow task is going to automatically be destroyed because it's a new object just for the scope of this function. So it's just going to start here, execute the slow task, and then as soon as the function ends, the scope slow task is going to be destroyed. So it's going to give back the control to the user, and I'm just going to say that it was a success because the user didn't cancel the task in the middle. That was for the first function. Then I also wanted to show you an example of how you can nest a slow task inside another one, and it's actually super simple. So we're going to do that real quick right here at the bottom. And well, the first step is to create the first slow task. That way you'll be able to have a second slow task. So let's create the first slow task. This time my slow task is only going to do 5 iterations. So that's what I'm going to have right here. My iteration count is going to be 5. Then I'm going to create my slow task. So new FScopedSlowTask. I'm going to name it first slow task, FScopedSlowTask. I provide my iteration count, which is 5. And then the text I want to write on that first slow task. I'm going to keep the same namespace, but I'm going to change the key. So now it's first slow task, and the text is going to be processing by default. And now I have my first slow task that I'm going to display on screen. So first slow task, make dialog, it's going to spawn a new window, and I want to have a cancel button. So I'm going to say true right here. Here we go. I have my first slow task on screen. Then I'm going to do my for loop. It's going to be a simple 5 iteration for loop. And in there, I'm going to update my progress every iteration of my for loop. So first slow task, enter progress frame. I'm doing 1 progress, same as the first function. So just incrementing 1 progress at a time. And then I'm also going to update my text right here to write processing and the number of iterations I still have to do. Here we go. My first slow task is getting updated. Then I'm also going to print something just so my first slow task does something. Doesn't really matter. I have my log temp right here. Here we go. My first slow task is done. Then during that slow task, I want to do sub steps. And in my case, I'm just going to have 1 extra sub step, and it's going to be another slow task. And it's just going to be the same exact logic. Actually, I'm just going to do another for loop inside the first for loop. I'm going to do the same thing. So second iteration count is going to be 100,000, then create my second slow task inside the first one. So second slow task, FScopedSlowTask. You give it the amount of steps you have to do for that slow task. So 100,000 in my case. And then I'm going to choose which text I want to write on that slow task. Once again, I'm changing the key because that's going to be a different context. So I have to update the key of my message. So now it's second slow task, and I'm writing processing by default. Then after that, I'm going to display that progress bar on screen also. So second slow task, make dialog true because because I want to keep the cancel button. Okay, so now I created a slow task inside another slow task. And what is that going to do? Well, first it's going to create a big progress bar for the first slow task. So the first slow task is going to have a major progress bar, and under that major progress bar, it's going to create a second progress bar, a smaller one right here, and that's just going to be part of the major one. So you can have as many slow tasks stacked as you want. In my case, I only have two. I have one main one and a subtask right here. In that way, you could display as many subtasks as you want for your main task. In my case, I only have one right here. That big task is going to run 5 times. This small one is going to run 100,000 times, and both together are going to contribute to that first big progress bar. Good. Okay, so I created my second slow task. Now it's not doing anything, so I'm just going to do a for loop once again. So second for loop right here, and then I'm going to also update my text on my second progress bar. So second slow task, enter progress frame. I'm writing 1 again because I'm doing 1 step at a time. Then I'm updating my text right here. Second slow task, make sure to use the same key right here, and then processing and the amount of iteration I still have to do. Good. And then I'm just going to print something once again, just so I'm doing something inside my for loop. Perfect. So now I have a slow task inside another slow task, and I'm gonna have 2 progress bars on screen, and that's it. We're actually done with that, but I also want to support the cancel button, and that's what I'm gonna do right here. I'm going to put it inside the second slow task because it runs way faster than the first one. The first one only runs 5 times, the second one runs 100,000 times, so the receive cancel is going to be checked more often. In my case, I want to be able to cancel at any point in my loop, so I'm just going to put it right here. But if you want, in your case, to be able to cancel only during the big iterations of your loop and not the small ones, you can put it outside of the second for loop, and it's just going to break well in that big one. Anyway, that's your choice. In my case, I'm going to put it right here, and actually, there's one big limitation about that. You cannot really easily cancel the sub-slow task. You can cancel the major thing, you can cancel everything, but you cannot really cancel one specific subtask. If, for example, you had one big slow task, and then under that big slow task, you have like 5 steps. You cannot really just cancel one of the steps. You cannot cancel only the step 2 or step 4. You have to cancel pretty much everything. And the reason behind that is just because the receive user cancel doesn't reset. Actually, it resets once all the slow tasks are completed, including the first ones. So as long as the first one exists, this receive user cancel is always going to keep the same value. So if the user cancels at any point during that big process, it's going to cancel for the duration of the whole process, not only during this second slow task. So yeah, that's a little bit sad because it would be nice to be able to cancel, let's say, the second step and the fourth step, but keep all the other ones. But it's not really possible. So yeah, we have to deal with it. And that's also why I wanted to use gwarn receive user cancel instead of first slow task should cancel or second slow task should cancel. These two are going to do the same exact thing. So first slow task should cancel or second slow task should cancel. They are going to do the same exact thing. They are going to also call receive user cancel. And that's just one variable that is going to be used for any other slow task that you create in your hierarchy. So if you have one major task and 5 subtasks, they are all going to fetch that information from the same place. So if at any point during the whole process, it doesn't matter if it's the first, second, or 5th steps, if the user press cancel, it's going to stay canceled until the end of the whole process. So in this case right here, for example, if I just wanted to break out of the second loop, it will not really be possible because I'm breaking right here, and then it's just going to end that loop. That's fine. It's going to come back to the first loop right here, and then when I start the second loop again, like during the second iteration of the first one, it's going to reach this point right here, and hey, the user still canceled it because he clicked on it once and it remained canceled until the end of all the slow tasks. So it's breaking again, it's going to go back at the beginning and then go back here, and then it's going to break again, go back at the beginning, come back here, break again until the first loop is also completed. So you cannot only cancel some specific steps, you pretty much have to cancel the whole process. Anyway, this is going to run, it's going to run the first task and the second task, and then at the end I'm just going to say if it's a success or not based on if the user canceled it or not, and then I'm just going to give a bit more information about that to my user, and that's about it. So now it's time to jump in Unreal to see if it works. And so in Unreal today the test is going to be pretty simple and straightforward. So I have a little user interface right here. If I open it, it looks like that. I just have 2 buttons to call the 2 functions we created today. So execute slow task, execute nested slow task. When I click click on those buttons, I'm just going in the graph right here, and it's simply going to call our two functions. So SlowTask is going to call SlowTask, and NestedSlowTask is going to call NestedSlowTask. As simple as that. So let's go see how it looks. I'm going to start my user interface right here. Here we go. I have a simple window. And now if I click on Execute SlowTask, we can see that, hey, I have a progress bar. My whole Unreal is frozen right now. I cannot access anything in the editor except this progress bar right here that I can see. I can see the progress. So that's pretty cool. And now that I reach the middle of my process, which is 50,000 iterations, this little number right here is a little bit wrong, but I'm in the middle of my process because I have my question right here. Do you want to continue? And that's what I asked in the code, and I'm just gonna say yes. Here we go. The progress bar is going to continue until the end. Hey, it completed. Perfect. The task is completed. I now have access to Unreal again, and I have all the prints in the output log right here. Here we go. I have a bunch of prints. Okay, that seemed to work. And now I can start this slow task again. I can wait until the middle one more time. Okay, good. And now do I want to continue? No, I'm just going to cancel. And it actually canceled. It stopped counting at 50,000, and it's going to say that the user didn't want to continue the process. It just stopped right there. Perfect. What if I canceled before that? So I'm going to cancel right here. Yeah, did it work? Yes, it canceled. So it says that it canceled by the user and it stopped counting at 30,000 something. Oh, okay, it seemed to work. I can also obviously cancel after the pop-up. So here I'm just going to wait until the pop-up. Here we go. I can continue. Yes, and then I can cancel. Let's say here it's going to cancel at 75,000. Here we go. We can see that it canceled at 78,000. Good enough. So the first button seemed to work. We can see that it's now possible to have a progress bar while the engine is frozen and processing. Good, perfect. What about the second function? I'm going to click that one, and now we can see, oh, we have the same progress bar. Oh, but we have a second progress bar that is going up and up and up. And then the first progress bar is still going up. So it's going up, going up. Second one is also going up. So all the big iterations of my for loop are counted right here. So processing 2 out of 5. And then under that, we have the 100,000 iterations that I have at the bottom right here. So we can wait until the progress bar is fully completed to make sure that it worked. So 4 out of 5, 2, and this one is processing, and it completed. Here we go. It seemed to work. So the task is completed. My Unreal is still a little bit frozen. Okay, it unfroze. Now my execute nested slow task is completed successfully. And here I printed a bunch of stuff in my log. And my log is pretty long right now because I have like, I don't know, 600,000 messages in there. Yeah, that's pretty long. But it was not too bad because the editor was not frozen during that time. It froze only a split second at the end, but that's about it. It was just long enough to refresh the output log. Other than that, I was able to cancel the process at any point during the execution. So I can, for example, do it right now. I can cancel and hey, it canceled properly. And I still have a visual telling me that, hey, the process is still processing. It's not frozen. So the editor is still running. Be patient. The task is going to be completed. And that's pretty much something we want the user to know, that the editor is not frozen, because right now I cannot click on anything. I cannot do anything in the editor except this little cancel button right here. It's pretty nice to have a progress bar that lets us see the progress and cancel it if we want to. Anyway, now you know how to display progress bar with C++, and that's gonna be it for today's video. So I'm gonna see you in the next one. Bye bye.